It goes back about 10 to 12,000 years ago, where we found archaeological and genetic evidence of cannabis throughout Central Asia. 8 to 10,000 years ago, there were Vedic Sanskrit writings from India that mentioned ganja, which was their word for cannabis. About 5,000 years ago is the first known documentation in writing of cannabis as medicinal, and that was by the Chinese emperor at the time. Around 4,000 years ago, we found a burial site that had a significant amount of cannabis pollen in one of the graves. It was thought to have been used as medicine. Maybe the person was sick. Around 3,500 years ago, Hindu travelers traveling throughout Africa introduced the plant there. Africans mostly used cannabis for consumption. As far as we know, their word was hashish for the cannabis at the time. Africans eventually introduced the plant into Jamaica, where their term for cannabis became mariamba, and that was, again, between 1,000 to 3,500 years ago. Around 3,000 years ago is the first evidence we have where cannabis was being used to smoke, more and spiritual. It could have been medicinal uses too, but definitely cultural, because we find evidence of that throughout the world. Around 1500, the plant is now introduced into Mexico, where their name for the plant was marijuana, spelled with an H instead of a J, as it is now. It was also coined colitas at the time. And then around 1619 is the first documented evidence we have of the plant and its use throughout all of North America. We can do another video on the history of cannabis in North 1600s by the Jamestown settlers. It was grown widely for a couple hundred years, used for necessities, ropes, clothing, paper, cells. In 1841, middle 1800s, Dr. William O'Shaughnessy, a physician working over in India, then introduced the plant to the Western world for its medicinal uses. The plant quickly became quite popular as medicine, even introduced into the pharmacopoeia. In the early 1900s, around the 1920s, 1930s, things began to take a turn, where then we started seeing various state prohibitions up until 1937, when President Roosevelt actually signed the Marijuana Tax Act, which effectively banned cultivation or use of cannabis on a federal level. And shortly after that, around the same time, Henry Anslinger and others with prohibition departments birthed the reefer madness, which was racially motivated misinformation and propaganda. So opinion of the plant began to change rapidly. That continued for the next 30, 40 years. In 1970, President Nixon then signed the Controlled Substances Act, which placed cannabis as a Schedule I drug, meaning no medicinal use, high risk for abuse, therefore banning the use of cannabis on a federal level. In 1973, Oregon was the first state to fully decriminalize the plant. And then in 1996, California was the first state to fully legalize marijuana for medicinal use. That was followed by about 20 additional states who then developed their own medical programs. Then in 2012, Washington and Colorado were the first two states to fully legalize the plant at the recreational level. And since then, we've had several other states follow suit, almost half of the states in the country. And an important note is in 2014, the Rohrabacher-Farr Act was passed, and that essentially blocked the federal government from interfering with marijuana laws in any state. So that was a very important amendment.